Our workplaces and colleges have historically been designed by and for men. Their functioning rarely takes into account the needs of women. But the Kerala government is hoping to break that cycle, at least in colleges. The Education Department is planning to extend menstrual leave to all female students. A similar plan was approved by the Cochin University of Science and Technology. But the government says it is now looking at a blanket rule so that all female students can enjoy this benefit. So how exactly does menstrual leave work? In the case of CUCAT, the minimum attendance threshold has been reduced for women. You need 75% attendance in class to sit for examinations, but for female students, that number will go down to 73%. So an extra 2% cushion will be awarded to female students. Now, Education Minister Dr. R. Bindu announced the decision on social media. She says menstruation is a period of mood swings and discomfort and pain for women, and that she understands the difficulties faced by female students during this time. It's certainly a positive move by the Kerala government. Only a handful of countries in the world actually have national laws regarding menstrual leave. This includes Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Indonesia as well. Russia, of course. 100 years ago, their labor rights gave women the right to take menstrual leaves. That was 100 years ago. Here in India, companies like Zomato, Byju's, and the Culture magazine are offering menstrual leaves. Having said that, there is an ongoing debate. Some say menstrual leaves will reinforce gender stereotypes and menstrual stigma, that it will negatively impact the gender wage gap, or in this case, the academic gap. The question is, how do you sidestep these critics? By rubbishing the idea of menstrual leaves completely, or finding solutions to make our system more flexible, more inclusive? Because when it comes to this debate, and my guest will be joining me in just a bit, but when it comes to debates on period leaves, there are no grey areas. Either you're on one side or you're on the other. There is no nuanced view, as it were, on a subject like this. Zainab Sikander is a writer. She's a columnist. She's joining us on the broadcast. Dr. Trupti Gilada is an infectious disease specialist, joining us on the broadcast as well. Good to have you here, Trupti. And Aarti Chaudhary is an independent consultant, someone who's worked in HR for a really long time. Zainab, let me start with you. Now, we are talking about the Kerala government mulling very seriously, giving university students across the state period leave, menstrual leave. Is it something that will hinder or help these students? Because, as I said, opinion when it comes to period leaves is either black or white.
I think it will help, young women in their output and productiveness. I find this debate very hypocritical, where they say that, then it'll show preferential treatment towards women, and where's the equality and where's the feminism. But one has to realize equality isn't about how strong your body is or how well your body performs. Physiologically and anatomically, men and women are different. That's why when we see even sports, in the weightlifting category, men and women are judged differently. In wrestling category, men and women are judged differently. In all sporting categories, men and women are judged differently. So equality doesn't mean that if a man can pick up 200 pounds, even I'm supposed to pick up 200 pounds and I'm equal to the man. Equality is mental, it is cerebral. It is how a man and a woman thinks. That's where gender equality comes in. So say, for example, I can code an application or a website and I get paid a certain amount of it. The man and I should, if there's a man who's a coder, he should get the same amount for it, and so should I. In that, there should be no inequality. If a man puts in 8 hours of work and a woman puts in 8 hours of work, we should be paid the same. That is where wage equality comes in. Now, when it comes to period pains, one should realize, and it's been scientifically proved, that period pain is equivalent to a heart attack. So are we saying that women, if they do experience pain, they're still supposed to act normal? In fact, I feel it stigmatizes the whole idea of a woman trying to be strong, trying to be heroic, trying to keep her pains to herself and still, perform and overachieve. I think it's a very welcome move. I think if women are given the choice, to take a break, in the 3-4 days where they experience pain or mood swings or any sort of discomfort, it is great. And, I must tell you, there are also other disorders like endometriosis, which is a very debilitating, painful experience that women experience, during menstruation. Those women literally cannot get out of bed. So I personally feel menstrual leave is actually a very welcome move for women, and it's actually going to make things better for women. They're going to be more productive.
Aarti Chaudhary, will it make things better? Will it end up being an inclusive policy? Or will it end up companies across India saying, let's hire fewer women because, you may have to give them extra leave because of menstruation. I know for a fact that, if you take my office itself, you have young women, me included, who find it very difficult, at least one day in a month, to get to work. We know how we do it. We do it because we don't want to get judged for our gender. So, this whole talk of period leaves being misused, I think is a fallacy. If you look at, if you look at the 2014 data that is coming to us from Japan, for example, that introduced period leave or menstruation leave in 2014, they talk about the fact that less than 1% women have actually availed it.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Shreya. So the idea behind offering period leave or menstrual leave, I'm sure it is coming from a good place. But the proof of the pudding is in its tasting, and any policy is based on how well it is executed. Like you rightly pointed out, very few people actually avail such facilities, especially in India, in our context. For somebody to even express that I have my periods on so-and-so day and I need to take time off is a conversation most women avoid. I've also come across situations where people have said that I'm being discriminated against because of this. Sexual harassment, I'm being tracked on what days I took leave last month, how my period cycle is moving. And at the same time, when we talk about inclusion, periods may be something that many women need time off for, but there could be other conditions as well. For example, a person may need blood transfusion regularly, so they need to take time off. There could be other physical as well as mental situations that require a person to take time off, whether at university or at the workplace. I think the whole idea is to say, if somebody needs it, that provision should be there, that sensitivity should be there, and we should have a more flexible approach to it to look at personal needs. But at the same time, I would say it's a welcome thing that at least conversation about menstruation will start, because that's something most people avoid. Both men and women are extremely uncomfortable talking about menstruation. I don't see many young women walking up to their managers and saying, I've started my periods, I'm not going to be coming to office for the next 2 days.
We are talking about period leave, we are talking about menstruation leave. Dr. Tripti Gilada, you continue to be with us. As a young mother, as a medical profession, a lot of people can talk about the fact that what is this big fuss about menstruations? Every woman in this, in this world gets it. It's something that is natural. It's something that is biological. If you're in pain, you need to live with it. Of course, you need to live with it, and everyone lives with it. It performs an important function in our bodies. But the fact is that for very many women, not just in this country, but across the world, your periods, at least 1 or 2 days, is a period of extreme pain. It's a period when you are working to just about 30 to 40% of your capacity. Just tell our viewers, the changes that a body goes through during periods and whether that justifies maybe 1 day a month being given off to women, according to you.
So definitely, we definitely understand from where this entire proposition is coming from. We know that on an average 2 or 3 days for women during menstruation can be difficult, not just physically, but also emotionally because of the hormonal changes that are there. And yes, Not all women might experience it, but more than 50% of women do experience changes where they will really not want to get to work or get to school or college. That is true. But we also understand that we live in a society where men and women are still not comfortable talking about their periods or talking about when they are menstruating. And I think in that sense, while our society still gets there, where menstrual cycles or periods becomes like a normal conversation, I think until then, calling a leave a menstrual leave might do some damage. And we know that because students will not want to talk about menstruation to their friends, whether even sometimes even girls. And now when women take off for any other reason, it might be something at home, it will be called a menstrual leave, even though it's not a menstrual leave. So I definitely agree that there should be a provision where women are allowed to take this leave, but blanketly calling it a menstrual leave might not be the right way. It should probably call sickness leave or sick leave. And yes, sick leave will give that provision where women take off for their health. And we also know that women are the primary care providers for people at home. So whether it's a child or an ailing mother or a grandmother or a mother-in-law, and there you give that woman that much window to take off from work, whether it's for her health or health of someone at home. And at the same time, not stigmatizing every leave that she takes being called as menstrual leave and making it a matter of joke. We've experienced it ourselves in college. Even being from medical college, when a lady is frustrated or upset, they'll say, "Oh, she's just PMSing." Where we say there's premenstrual syndrome. So we know that sometimes these issues are used as a way to mock women, and I think just blanketly labeling this leave as menstrual leave might have its downsides.
It might have its downsides, but the upside possibly could be that there's a more open conversation about menstruation. The stigmatization that usually happens, like, oh, she must be PMSing, as you just said, we've all heard it. Maybe there's a little more understanding on where it is coming from. I don't know. It could work both ways. Ladies, give me a minute. We have Captain Jaspal who's calling us from Rohtak, and I think he has a view on the matter. Captain Jaspal, please go ahead.
Shreya, good evening, and good evening to the light panel we have. Very well informed. You see, as you remarked, it will be held against you all. It shall be a self-goal. It will be a ground for not giving you a job. B, in my opinion, it will be better to give a day off to a lady who has got long hairs so that she enjoys that day and she is grateful. It should not be accepted by the ladies themselves that this is no handicap. We are not handicapped by this biological phenomenon. And we can bear with it, otherwise you unnecessarily get into
Absolutely.
a lower category. Thank you.
Captain Jaspal, thank you very much. And you are voicing something that many women in my newsroom have voiced as well, Zainab Sikander, to say that, in any case, women in workplaces find it difficult. There is not just a glass ceiling. We also know there's a huge gender pay gap. When you introduce things like menstrual leave, which is so gender specific, it's that opportunity for an employer to say, let's not hire them. They could be difficult. I don't think I can afford to give one day off per month to every woman in my organization. Yes, I do understand that many countries across the world have done it. Spain has done it. Zambia has it. Taiwan has it. South Korea has it. Japan has it. Indonesia has it. But in India, it could end up boomeranging on us.
Exactly the point. That's exactly what we have to change when other countries have successfully implemented this. In fact, the whole conversation around menstrual leave destigmatizes menstruation. I don't agree with, Dr. Gilada, because to call it sick leave, we're not sick. We actually have biologically, anatomically, physiologically, our bodies are made that we are, in a month, 4 days, we bleed. and we are not embarrassed about it. Anybody can mock us, but the conversation has to be made in our workplaces, in our educational institutions, where we say, yes, we have our period and it is very uncomfortable for us. And it is due to these periods that we give society children. You know, we are providing, women are so strong that we rear children, we produce children, and it is because of this biological phenomena. And we need a break when we have this biological phenomena every month, so that our productiveness is better, so that we can perform much better in the days that we are doing better. You know, instead of being apologetic about having your period, you know, we are actually owning it. So having menstrual leave actually destigmatizes the whole conversation around periods, and that is what these countries have successfully done.
It does, but it also sets off that debate. Which will say, Zainab, you know, where men will turn around and say, your male colleagues will turn around and say, this is preferential treatment. Why should they get 1 day or 2 days a month off when we don't? If they expect equality, if they expect equal pay, if they expect equal opportunity, they have to work equally hard under whatever circumstances they are in. We work when we are unwell, we show up when we have fever. What's their problem? This is preferential treatment. Aarti Chaudhary, is that a conversation that people like you have had with the male colleagues at your workplace?
Absolutely. Absolutely, you're going in the right direction. And that's why I said when we talk about equality or equity, why just menstruation? People can have any kind of special needs. I gave the example of somebody requiring blood transfusion periodically, or any other need that a person may have. I think it's about sensitivity. And when we talk about menstruation, I think leave is one part of it, but providing hygienic washrooms, sanitary napkins, place to rest, place to change, especially a lot of women who are on the field, sales force, find it very difficult to even find a clean place to change when they're having their period. So I think as organizations, as institutions, there's a lot other things that need to be focused on, even within menstruation, that can be done. And we have to look beyond the gender stereotype and say, if we are going to be sensitive to people's needs, okay, can that sensitivity be extended to everyone, not just make it a gender card to be showcased? So people can have needs, and we must factor those in. The
argument is,
especially when we talk about the argument at the academic institutions.
Aarti Chaudhary, the flip side to that argument will be, flip side of the argument will be that if you're talking about equality at the workplace, then it works both ways. If you don't expect women to avail a period leave or a menstruation leave, and I can tell you with great authority that most women I know will be dying but will show up for work because they don't want to be judged on their gender. But you know, the flip side of the argument is, if workplaces expect you to behave like a professional, which you should, irrespective of your gender,
or they are too embarrassed
then workplaces
to say
need
that
to be
they're
professional enough to, but workplaces need to be professional enough to have equal pay for equal work, which doesn't happen. Not in this country, nowhere in the world.
See, I'm also talking about what happens when somebody takes leave. When we talk about, so when we talk about academics, what happens to the classes that a person has missed? Is there some way to make up for those classes? If we are talking about the workplace, if somebody is taking time off, what happens to the work that needed to be done on those 2 days? Will the person need to stretch over the rest of the month to be able to complete it? I think there needs to be a deeper conversation and look at the way this policy can be executed rather than just announcing it without thinking through. Because the execution is really the key in it. It's a great place to start. I completely agree with Zainab. It's a conversation that starts. Menstruation must be spoken about, must be destigmatized. We should not feel embarrassed. But the fact is, today we are embarrassed. Today, I have a 20-year-old son. I don't think I want to discuss even my menopause with him. I mean, so there is something that we need to do as a society.
Many
and this
people
is a
say
good place
don't
to start,
gender the
but
workplace.
execution needs to be looked into.
many people say you start something like a
Yes.
period leave
Don't gender a workplace.
or a
That's why I say
menstruation leave. You are gendering the workplace, genderize the workplace. I see the logic to that, but yeah, I see the logic to
absolutely.
that, and I see the logic to the fact that just call it sick leave. Don't call it menstruation leave because, as you said, it's gendering, and let leaves be gender neutral. Ramesh is calling us from Mumbai. It's interesting that the callers we are getting are all male callers. It's interesting, and it's great for them to have a view as well. Ramesh, please go ahead. You're calling us from Mumbai.
Hello. Can you hear me? Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, Ramesh. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think this will be the first step in recognizing the special status that nature has given to women. Irrespective of what, other points might say, we must make it mandatory for women to have this, special leave. Women are more than men. Men are women.
No,
Men and women are not equal. Women are more than men, actually. Nature has given a special responsibility to women. We must respect that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. It's interesting. This is what the CEO of Guzoop, Zainab, if you're in with us, had said. Why should our women co-workers have to have these awkward conversations or ask for leave? It should be something that is given, that is understood. Again, as I said, there are 2 points of views here. But the big worry is that this could end up boomeranging on women, where you have male colleagues and HR and your bosses say, oh, there she is, playing the woman card again.
Mm. Uh, Firstly, I would want to say that as a woman, I personally wouldn't want to work in such a toxic workplace. But I realize lots of people don't have that choice, where they can leave a workplace because they find it very toxic, and the conversations are very sexist. But then again, where do we start? Do we just keep the status quo as it is and just continue living the way we're living, or as a society do we evolve and have uncomfortable conversations that we thought till now we shouldn't be having? And there are so many examples that other countries have shown us. So I think it's a good start. And if there is gender bias still happening, in workplaces, then all the more reason for us to mandate it as a policy. Because once it's mandated as a policy, a woman cannot be picked on it. Right now, we're talking Kerala government only introducing it in colleges. So a girl student cannot be picked on low attendance, because then, she has the right, she has the choice to miss certain days because she's not feeling well. Similarly, if in workplaces, it's a policy that women can take leaves on when they're menstruating, then nobody can pick on them. Right now what's happening is that you are picking on women because there isn't a policy that is looking into the health of women. There is no sensitivity within our workplaces where women are seen, as people who go through pain, who are going through a biological process in which they need extra care. It's not like we are being sensitive and asking for extra care unnecessarily. It is something that our bodies are going through. So it actually sensitizes society. It makes society more emancipated and gives a more broader viewpoint to men to look at women not just as, like I said, these heroic beings, who can do it all. That isn't feminism, and that isn't empowerment. Empowerment is that with the skills that we have, we are appreciated and we are not picked on. So like you're rightly saying, that this can boomerang, but we have to create circumstances and mandate policies that it won't boomerang. Just the way women representation is something that should be
Well,
mandated, not just in the parliament but workplaces. And a lot of workplaces are having policies in which a certain amount of
we
women
do
have
not
to be
live in an
hired.
ideal world, Zainab, unfortunately.
I
We
know.
don't live in an ideal world, unfortunately, and there are no ideal workplaces. I think all of us
That's
recognize
true.
that. Dr.
That's true.
Trupti Gilada, there is one argument that has been made, and I've read this a lot. Uh, you ask for something like period leaves, menstruation leaves, and you are taking feminism back 100 years. This is not why so many women across the globe fought for their right to equality. As a working woman, uh, I want to ask you if there is a middle ground somewhere here, because when I was coming into this discussion, I had a conversation with at least 5 to 6 working women in my office, and they weren't just young girls, they were women of all age groups. As I said, they're split down the middle, and you understand both points of views. I know for a fact that there is one day in a month when I find it absolutely impossible to get out of bed and get to work. I do it because, well, you learn to train yourself to do it. Plus, as I said, you don't want to be judged on your gender. Uh, so you understand that it is painful. There are a couple of days when you're not productive, but then there is also the other argument that if you want equality at the workplace, you have to forget gender, and you just have to get to work, period or not. I want to ask you if there's a middle path somewhere. For example, in schools, yes, because girls who are just starting menstruating, maybe they're going through pain, they don't understand what's happening, etc. We know it can be very painful for young girls. Maybe in schools, yes, university perhaps, but let's think about it twice before we make something like this mandatory at workplaces.
So definitely, it's very important that we understand what we mean by gender equality. And when we say gender equality, doesn't mean men and women are just the same. Gender equality means that being more sensitive to the requirements of either gender. And menstruation, like I said earlier, menstruation might just be one of those things. Right now we're talking about menstruation. We also know that it's more than 80% of the women, and maybe it's much more than, what I'm quoting is much lesser. More than 80% of the women are responsible for everything at home, including running the home and childcare and care of the others at home. And we also do not take into account that, a lot of times mothers have to take leave because their kids are sick and the dads refuse to take leave or cannot take leave for whatever reason. And there isn't a provision either where the father can take leave for the child being sick. And that's where we bring in gender equality, that we are sensitive to the needs even of a man when he says that he needs to be home because his wife needs to get to work. So it's a great start to the conversation of menstruation, though I'm really worried if this is the best start, because like you said, this might just boomerang if this expands to workplaces going forward. And, the best way to do this wouldn't just be quantitative research. What this requires is qualitative research to actually, like you said, before you came in, you spoke to 5 women, and that's what we really need to do, is actually sit down with women, with men, with stakeholders, with HR, and see what would be the most sensitive way to introduce this. And I still think that calling it menstrual leave is probably not the right way. Whether we call it sick leave, health leave, we can choose what we want to call it. And if we do not want to label menstruation as illness, then the other thing that if you're not feeling sick, then why don't you just come to work? But the fact is, you do feel sick on the first or the second day. You're actually feeling sick, even though it's physiological. So whatever we label it, but labeling every leave as menstrual leave might just boomerang.
Let's give the last word to a caller who's calling us from Mumbai. Indira is on the line. Indira, please go ahead. Okay, I believe the phone has been disconnected. We leave it here, ladies. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us. It's an ongoing debate, as I said. It's a nuanced one. People have very strong opinions when it comes to period leave or menstruation leave. It exists in many countries around the world. It exists in some companies in this country as well. Their experience so far has been that women have not misused it, because one of the things that often gets said about menstruation or period leave is, oh, it'll get misused. In Japan, as I said, less than 1% women have availed it. This is a study from 2014. In India, again, similarly, the companies that are giving period leaves seem to suggest that the numbers in the data they have so far suggest that period leaves are not being misused. But if this idea of period leaves in universities has to open up to workplaces as well, you will need to have a more nuanced discussion about it. Otherwise, this entire idea, well-intentioned as it is, could boomerang. And as they say, The path to hell is paved with good intentions. We'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much. Zainab, good to have you on the show. Dr. Trupti, thank you very much. And Aarti Chaudhary, good to have you on the show as well. I'm slipping into a quick break on the show. There's more news coming up on the other side.